Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Baby Assassins, a Japanese action comedy from 2021. Before getting to my review, I think it's important to set the overall stage by pointing out that this movie has connections to the Japanese action film Hydra, which came out in 2019. The following is a quote from the website City on Fire that I think summarizes this connection rather well. Straight off the bat, it's clear that Baby Assassins shares a significant amount of DNA with 2019's Hydra, not only in the fact that Hydra's director Kensuke Sonomura is on board here as fight choreographer, and its leading man Masanori Mimoto shows up on bad guy duty, but also in its overall tone and approach. Hydra was more of a small-scale, slice-of-life human drama than an all-out action flick. Ironically, one that also involved assassins, and Baby Assassins looks to capture the same feel. So just keep that information in mind as we're going through here. Now, the plot of this film goes something like this. Upon graduation, highly trained teenage assassins, Chisato and Mahiro, are informed by upper management that they will need to hold down normal jobs as a cover, and even worse, they'll be forced to share an apartment together. However, after an unfortunate run-in with a Yakuza member, the two must band together to survive an epic fight for their lives. Now, I found myself taking a lot of notes during the opening 10 minutes of this film, because so much of the film is projected from that scene. It begins with the blonde-haired girl, played by Saori Izawa, who is having an interview for a job at a local convenience mart. And the manager seems a little... Manager seems a little bit off, and as it turns out, the blonde girl has been assigned to assassinate him. Unfortunately for her, she meets more resistance than originally planned. So similar to Hydra, like the action design is a mix of scrappy, rough, realistic fighting with precisely choreographed martial arts. So there's a lot of missed strikes in this, partial strikes, people getting tangled up in grappling maneuvers with each other, as well as some fast, lethal kill shots involving knives and fists. And it kind of shifts between these two action designs within the same fight, which is pretty effective because these characters are simply attempting to kind of gather themselves just to set up for a good kill shot on their opponents. I think it's a very strong opening scene in that convenience mart. Similar to some other Japanese action movies in recent years involving assassins, like the Fable movies, for example, which also have a similar premise, by the way, there is a long middle section in Baby Assassins that consists primarily of drama and comedy. And then you get one more action scene at the end of the film. But I will say that that final one-on-one fight near the end is legit. And if you enjoyed the fights in Hydra, this is right up your alley because it's very similar in style. Very fast and some impressive maneuvers in there. Saori Izawa is an actual stunt woman, and they give her the bulk of the hand-to-hand fighting, and that's one benefit of casting a stunt woman in an actual role in the film. And then you have the brunette actress who's also the co-lead, Akari Takahashi, and she handles more of the gunplay mostly. So that's kind of how they divvy up the action with both. Again, not a lot of action here. You got a scene at the beginning, scene near the end, but when it shows up, it satisfies. So what about the rest of the film, though? And this is an important question, because if the rest of the film is boring, it becomes a problem, given the lower quantity of fighting in this. But thankfully, I did enjoy the other elements on display. One observation I had was that, the personalities of our main characters look like it might be a problem early on. I was asking myself, is this going to be one of those movies where the protagonists are completely unlikable and they just kill everyone with ease, one of those? But that's not how it turns out. And actually, during the final fight, our main character gets beat up pretty bad. So it's nice that this type of stuff isn't too easy for them. But in terms of performances, the acting felt like a little bit try-hard near the beginning, with the whole I'm a badass vibe. And if you remember, just recently I reviewed The Witch Part 2, the Korean film, and I was like done with all of like the all the yapping and like the overall attitude of the characters, like, oh, I'm such a badass. And as you know, if you've seen that movie, it doesn't quite turn out that way. So yeah, early on I was like, I don't know, these girls, they think they're pretty untouchable right now. Is this going to be a problem? But it doesn't become a problem. And actually, they're so incompetent at like normal day-to-day tasks. It's quite amusing how they play this out. So like if they're trying to like go for a job interview or something or whatever else, they're not particularly talented or good at that stuff. So it humanizes them quite a bit. And the filmmakers do a good job of mining some comedy out of those situations. Like there's a clothes dryer scene that I found was pretty funny. The subsequent scene involving ramen noodles that they were eating is pretty funny. And there were other points in the film where I did laugh out loud because the comedy is kind of situational to this film and dialogue driven. And there's also some comedy regarding these Yakuza guys who show up. And like there's one scene where they go into a maid cafe to kind of scope out the industry. And just the way that they're playing off like the maid cafe girls was really, really funny. Very, very like awkward situation. And there's another scene that I liked involving like those guys who show up to clean up the dead bodies after an assassination, and he starts complaining to our protagonist because she's messy when she kills people, and he's the one who has to like clean it up. So he's like complaining to her for like 5 minutes about how she makes his job difficult. And I found that scene quite amusing as well. So there is some good comedy in this. I did like it. There is also a dramatic component regarding like socially awkward youths and how they have difficulty forming relationships with other people. So there's a little bit of that in here as well. So I think the non-action content is good enough to hold my interest. I enjoyed it. The highlights, I think, are the 2 action set pieces, though. Also, fun fact, the actor from Koji Shiraishi's Senritsu Kaiki File horror films, he shows up in an extended cameo during the middle of the movie, and I always like seeing him. So in summary, I'm glad that Japan is making more of these like contemporary urban action movies, over the past few years. I've read that like, John Wick has been an influence into like getting these movies produced or whatever. And I've always complained about the lack of movies like this coming from the Japanese film industry. And I hope they continue to make more of them because overall they're doing a pretty good job. If you count the Fable movies in this, I mean, that's 3 good ones, right off the bat over the past few years. And I think in order to take these movies to like the next level, I think they need to put a little bit more money into them and have a nice big action set piece in the middle of the film, to kind of like help the pacing out a little bit. But hey, if they can do that, you never know. We might have some like newer classics come out of this industry the next few years if they kind of continue to up their game with this particular style of action flick. So yeah, it's I recommend this. It's a good flick, and it's streaming on Amazon, I think, and a few other websites. Oh, it's on Hi-Ya as well, if you are familiar with that website. And it's also available on Blu-ray. And as always, I will see you next time.